Hey, it's Fletcher, Vice President of Public Safety Solutions here at 911 Inform. Welcome to this episode of Next Generation 911 FutureMakers. This podcast is not only about the next generation of 911 services, but fostering the next generation of 911 leadership. So sit back, listen, and enjoy this session of a Next Generation 911 FutureMaker. Hi, I'm Mark Fletcher. I'm the Vice President of Public Safety Solutions at 911 Inform. Next Generation 911 FutureMakers is about building the future, of course. And who better to talk to than someone who's in charge of building that future generation? My guest today is Professor Carol Davis, who's an adjunct industry professor for Information Technology and Management at the Illinois Institute of Technology. She's also the director of the Institute's Realtime Communications Lab. And she's written a whole host of papers that cover the whole gamut. And somebody who I get to spend a few days with in the fall of every single year for the past 10 years at the IIT's Realtime Communications Conference. Professor Davis, welcome to Next Gen 911 FutureMakers. It is an absolute honor to have you here.
Thanks, Mark. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, and I'll try to, stay sort of on topic because we have so much fun talking together that who knows.
I know you and I get on the phone, and all of a sudden it's tomorrow morning. All this, and your husband and my wife are going, "Excuse me." Anyway.
So again, thanks very much. I want to tell you one thing though. My lab, the Real-Time Communications Lab, has moved into a new school at IIT, which is called the College of Computing, which includes the Information Technology and Management, and also includes computer science and applied mathematics. So that's speaking of the future. And educating future technologists in this growing field, that pretty well takes care of many of the skills that we need for this real-time communications, which at the moment is so pervasive that you don't notice it's there.
It's interesting. Yeah. You've been dealing with this for a long time, obviously. And when I first met you a decade ago, if you can believe it, I think things were very, very different. Everybody had a wonderful vision and future ideas, but all of a sudden, everybody's was thrust into, okay, enough theory, we got to make it work tomorrow.
Yes, and that's one of the great values, I think, of having a university lab. And because it offers a neutral ground and one in which, people are dedicated to actually discovering what's wrong with the applications, what's wrong with the protocols, what needs to be fixed. We try to break things. And sometimes we're the best venue for that. And it's one of the things that we teach in the lab and what we teach in all the courses is going to the edge cases, going to see what could go wrong. And as we develop developers and researchers, we teach them not only to test the sunny day, but to test all the rainy days and all the corner cases and the edges. So it was a tremendous hurry up. And, there's a tendency to say, well, just get it out there. In the case of Next Generation 911, that could be disastrous because in the case of NG911, you need basically 100% accuracy and connectivity, 99.999 plus, as far as the percentage of success over failure. So yeah.
You've had a lot of support from the industry for building out your lab and building out people, and I know industry is, one of the things that I always liked about your event every fall was that a good part of that was involving the students in that event, and they were very active participants in that event, but it also gave them an opportunity to develop their resumes and put their resumes in front of people that you don't hear about all the time, but they're the real creators in the world of industry at major corporations. So you're giving those students their first leg up into the real world.
Yes, and it's almost like pushing little birds out of the nest too, because we'll have 25 students sometimes being support personnel for the conference. So they're invited and encouraged to participate in all of the actual technical sessions. But at lunchtime, they would tend to cluster at their own little tables. And so you have now the leaders of industry and the leaders of research, and they're sitting here. So you need to mingle. You need to actually go sit at those tables. And you're correct. It's an important thing for the students to interact with the people who will be their peers and the people who will be their colleagues and coworkers in the future. And I would encourage them also, ask your questions. When you're in a session, you're as good as the next person. You should ask your questions. And after a little extra push, students will do that. And it's a resume builder and it's a confidence builder. And as I always tell them, if you get out into industry or into even research, after a few years, you're no longer keeping up with the many new applications and standards, protocols, and developments. So you want to come back to school, and far from these people, these leaders of technology, far from them thinking you're below them, they want to learn from you. So they want you to tell them what you're working on, and they want you to tell them what you're studying, because they probably didn't study it in school. So.
No, it's great. And I think, it's really nice to see that you've had a wide range of support, even from the federal government, for the past, I'm going to say at least probably 8 out of the last 10 years. We've had a representative from the Federal Communications Commission present as a keynote speaker or as a session speaker, at the conference every year, right on up to, the Director of Public Safety and Homeland Security a couple of different times. And, people like Henning Scholz-Rini, who was the CTO. That says a lot about your program and the value that you're bringing when you get the FCC to come in and support you like that.
Well, thanks. And some of those people came through your tender administration. So we appreciate
my constant nagging.
That too. That always helps. I also offer that, by the way, to other people. If you're having difficulty, I will offer to nag, and I appreciate nags. So thank you. And it pays off. But yes, the first of our conferences was actually organized by me in 2004. And it was not something that I had ever thought I would be doing. And when my dean asked me told me that he wanted me to do this, to organize a conference, I thought, and I said, to myself, this is really not in my wheelhouse, but I can visualize it sort of like a gathering of, the people I most want to talk to. And
nerds. They're all nerds, yeah. Carol. Okay.
But it was the people that we really wanted to hear from, the people that we want to know. And so that's how it began. And I like the fact that we've been able to keep it that way. And the people organizing the conference are really dedicated to learning things and to bringing the thought leaders in both industry and academia and in policy making. And we've been, policy and governance and tests, so that we really tried to run through the different places that our technology is actually going to play a role. Recently, specifically, we've begun a series of panel discussions on technology and social justice, which actually grew out of the conference itself. And it grew out of the felt needs of the technologists, of the students who were concerned that their technology should be focused towards benefiting society. And they wanted to understand times when it in fact was not used that way, and what they could do in their development itself. This especially came up in the areas of artificial intelligence and machine learning, where we all know of some of the negative possible outcomes. So there's it's been a wonderful, I think, educational experience for everybody working on it. And
I think one big vote of confidence has been come from NINA, the National Emergency Number Association. You've been historically running an event that they call ICE there. Tell us about the ICE initiative in your lab and where that's gone today.
Sure. So ICE, which stands for Industry Collaboration Event. So the ICE, the Industry Collaboration Events, are held to bring together the developers of and the vendors of the functional elements and the networks that are together making it possible to deliver next generation 911 services. And by next generation is meant that the same way you can have Uber, Lyft, Uber or Lyft, the same way you can have Grubhub, all the way we normally expect people to use our geographic location and our preferences to deliver food and transportation, that we should be able to do the same for 911. And it's one of the places that the society has been slowest in adopting next generation capabilities. So ICE is designed, the ICEs that are organized by NINA are designed to allow the vendors of the equipment and also the service providers to actually test their implementations, and is specifically to test the interoperability of their equipment. And so we've been doing that for, I look back since probably 8 or 9 years. I have it accurately posted on our website. But we've hosted a number of ICE events by now, and we appear to be the go-to lab for that. And we very much enjoy and appreciate doing it. We'll have sometimes 22 different vendors, representatives, all gathered on our Rice campus, which is a large suburban campus. And they bring their equipment, or they put it on a VPN or other connection into our lab. So our philosophy there was, we built what I call a breadboard. We basically have the entire emergency services IP backbone network built, a facsimile thereof, in our lab. And so we have all the components. We have the entry point. We have the various SIP routers that are designed to eventually route your call correctly based on its geographical location to a public safety answering point. So we have all those things there. The vendor of a PSAP basically will pull out our PSAP and put in their PSAP. The vendor of a ECRF, which is a piece of basically a database, will pull ours out and we'll put theirs in. The vendor of a ESRP, emergency services routing proxy, will pull ours out and put theirs in. As a result, we start out with a thing that works. We test end to end. We know our configuration works. We put your equipment in, and oops, if it doesn't work, then we know that, we can isolate where the trouble might be. Then we have two vendors, that may be adjacent to each other in the flow of information. Put their equipment in, pull our equipment out. Can they communicate? They have a whole series of tests. It's a wonderful opportunity. It's, I would say, one step above a plug fest and one step below a certification operation. The vendors and the service providers that participate, they keep records. NINA keeps records. We, of course, take traces of everything that's done, and we help to analyze those traces. It's a wonderful opportunity for competitors to get together, and people adjacent to each other in the field to get together and to work together, solving common problems. because as we know, nobody's going to have a monopoly end to end on this solution. And anybody who's in charge of purchasing equipment or services wants to be able to pick the best and perhaps also competitively priced piece of equipment. So this gives everybody an opportunity to shake out the bugs and make sure they interoperate. So these are interconnection, issues that they're going to be solving. So,
and this year, you actually expanded the boundaries of this test a little bit. And I think it was the very first time this went international.
Yes, that was a very exciting part of this year's work. So the way that worked, there's a sister organization in Europe called ENA, the European Emergency Numbers Association. And ENA used the ETSI lab, the ETSI lab in the south of France. And so the participants from the European side, from ENA, they all had VPNs into the ETSI lab. Our lab, the Real-Time Communications Lab at IIT, had a VPN, a big healthy tunnel between ourselves and ETSI. And then our vendors locally also had VPNs into our lab, because in the year of COVID, nobody came to the Rice campus this year. We were testing, even myself and Joe Cusimano, who actually runs the facility, we were testing remotely too. And of course, with remote access to all the equipment and multiple remote accesses, we were able to take the traces at a centralized point and see everything. But the addition of the ENA vendors and of the ETSI lab, we had a wonderful collaboration going. ETSI's lab people and ETSI's personnel worked really well with ours, and the NINA and ENA people were able to shake out a lot of bugs. Incidentally, as a result of that, we actually got more equipment for our breadboard too. So people, yeah. So
no, that's great. And certain people from ENA were always participants in your conference, and there was a little bit of cross-pollination, but travel was always an issue, even pre-COVID, going internationally. It's such a unique boutique little conference, but it's such a value proposition for anybody that goes, because you can sit down with people that literally created the internet and developed SIP and have a cup of coffee and pick their brain. And what an opportunity for a seasoned professional or a young student to have access to that. I mean, that's what being a future maker is all about. You're literally building the evolution of the people that are going to develop all of this wonderful, wonderful stuff. You're the one that deserves a medal, Carol.
Thank you. Or
a trophy.
A trophy, yeah, all right. A big trophy.
Big trophy. You got the display cases. I've been there. I've seen them. Right.
Yes. So the students have that opportunity, and the people, because as I said, you come to my conference, you come to this conference, and people are already working in silos. This is an opportunity to cross-pollinate between those silos as well. And so I think people are coming in order to learn and to bring back, the new ideas that they've gotten. There was something that we were talking about. I know we jumped from ICE back to the conference, I think. And the thing about the ICE is that it provides that too, to a good extent. And it also, this was where my train of thought was, that before I came to IIT, I worked for many years in the telecommunications industry as a system engineer and as a test engineer. And I did a certain amount of work at standards. And what I loved about that work is I would sit in a room with engineers who were actually working for a competitor of my company, and nobody cared. that what we were trying to do was find a core set of important and correct requirements, useful requirements that we could all adhere to. And then we would scatter, and the competition would be around the edges of that. So, and the reason for that was that we needed to have interoperability, and we were designing and developing things that would be used around the world, and they would have to interoperate with with other equipment that was, that had to be compatible. So the idea of the collaboration across boundaries, so that the ICE, of course, was a collaboration across national boundaries and across the Atlantic Ocean. And that was an interesting thing in itself, because there were latency issues that turned up that we could figure out ways around. We did some of our testing over the open internet as opposed to through the VPN. And all of this was incredibly useful educationally. So back to the conference itself, that's true. You can sit and with questions that may have been on the pins for 6 months, or crazy ideas like the one you had at the conference. You should talk about that for a minute. But the crazy idea you had at the conference, which eventually wound up becoming instantiated in law, and these are things that you have the opportunities to do when you're relaxing in between talks, in session breaks, and so forth. And these ideas bubble up. That's why it's so important that the students sit at the table with you and with the other, leaders in the field, and listen to those and develop their own interesting, crazy ideas. So,
that was a decade ago.
Was that seriously?
And I remember, and again, you're talking about a conference, 200-300 people. And I don't know, maybe I had the attention of 75, 100 people at most. And I brought this out, and I brought this concept out. And most of the people sat in that room and said, that dude's nuts. But there were like 3 or 4 people that said, that's very interesting. And that's the best impression I'll do of Henning. Who then invited me to Washington to talk at the FCC about my little concept. And what do we have today? Over the top next generation 911 through the ADR. Matter of fact, the ADR didn't even exist at that point in time. Yeah. My concept was called, what did I call it? I'm going to have to think about that. Oh, the ELM, the Emergency Location Manager. Because I was thinking tree, elm, right?
Yes.
No, it can't be the elm. It's going to be. And then a year later, it existed as the ADR. Okay, whatever. Right. So I didn't get to name it.
You didn't get to name a small point.
Small point. But a couple of people said, you know what? That's a really interesting idea. And could you take what I presented 10 years ago and implement that? No, that model actually didn't even work, but the concept worked. And today, what was built around it, you've got a whole company, Rapid SOS, that is delivering that concept in a little bit different format, but with that same construct underneath it, and saving lives every single day. Yeah. And that was born and bred at your conference, over in Herman Hall.
Right. And that's one of the benefits, I think, of having a conference like that. We're not an advertising conference. We're not one, that is designed primarily to sell product. We're one designed to nurture and to get new ideas flowing in a, more like, as I described, so I would go to a meeting to decide on a standard, and you're in there with every competitor your company has ever had, and you don't care. It's like I used to say at the conference, you drop your badges at the door, your company badges, and you're just here to actually enjoy the interaction. So I'm always been delighted that happened. And we do also spawn other, a lot of projects actually get, sort of inspired, and the original, nuggets of the idea are hatched at the conference because people are free to talk,
Yep. And you've actually contributed quite a bit to an area that I've always been kind of attracted to, and that's the indoor location accuracy. That's become your little baby there, and the different iterations of that. And the RTC Lab team has actually built several implementations of that on the campus to prove out that they've worked.
Yes.
And I think that there's a lot in that core research and technology that you'll find embedded in other product.
Yeah, well, that's certainly our hope. Our latest, that was a place for us where we reached out and had to learn another technology. We learned Internet of Things. We learned Bluetooth Low Energy and how to program. And we bought product and put the product on the walls. And that's right. We have had at least 3 different architectures, in one of which we used actually the Wi-Fi access points. And then the other 2, we've used Bluetooth Low Energy beacon technology. So, and got
well, imagine that, looking at Wi-Fi access point, BSSIDs, and determining location. Gee, Google, Apple, Skyhook, I wonder where all that concept came from.
Right, exactly.
Professor Davids, what you're doing, whether you realize it or not, what you're doing is affecting the world in a positive way.
Well, thank you. So you're going to say this, you're going to knock me off my feet again. But decades ago when I studied to be and became an engineer, it actually concerned me that I wanted to work on something that would actually be useful and helpful to humanity at large, not just necessarily to the bottom line of some corporation. And I worked in telecommunications, which seemed to me a very useful thing. No matter, everybody needs telecommunications, and so I'm happy that actually there's the need. And the society recognizes that we need to improve our communication. Right now, actually, I work with an IEEE workshop called CQR, Communications Quality and Reliability. And our whole workshop this spring, it's actually in May, is on bridging the digital divide, both the technologies and policies. And I'm actually chairing a session there focused on innovative ways that are going to be feasible for both densely populated urban and underserved communities, and also in rural areas, which are terribly underserved. So, and in chairing this session, of course, I've come across new innovative technologies that you wouldn't necessarily, be thinking about. You say, well, we know how to bring broadband to a city. We know how to do these things, but sometimes they prove to be really impractical, whether it's financially or in many cases it is purely financially. But for example, there's work on using the white space in television signals themselves and taking the unused pieces of the spectrum that's normally used for TV and filling that for high quality broadband access. And another is basically using one of the throwaway bands, the 60 gigahertz band, and focusing beams almost like a mesh network, bouncing them off of equipment posted on lampposts and buildings. So you find there are very interesting, innovative ways that engineers and technologists are figuring out that will actually, expand opportunities for people in, underserved communities, both urban and rural. So it's nice to see this energy flowing towards, technology for social good, which is what we have we just started, about a year ago, we started this panel series on technology for social good. So to sort of parallel what some of our students belong to, like the Engineers Without Borders, for example, and other, just simply work on applications that will help the community.
So where can people find out about the IIT RTC?
So there is a lab website, and then there's also the conference website.
No, thanks. That was great, Professor. And, again, thank you for everything that you do for the industry, for the future, for the students. IIT is really a fantastic resource for next generation 911 learning. And, I think it's great that you have a specialized track at this little boutique school for engineers. And I mean, talk about the, epiphany of building the future, right? This is what you're doing. You're planting the seeds and watering them.
I hope so. And I know exactly what you say. So people don't normally think about a special, niche in which they can apply their learning and know that they're doing an incredibly important service to their community. So it's an appealing thing. And, we've done specific courses designed to bring in our local community. And we've had short courses and middle-sized courses to help people who are already in technology, but their technology is old and they need to upgrade them. So, that's the kind of thing we're looking forward to, especially now when there's a greater understanding of the need to broaden the demographic of people who can actually benefit from the technology that we teach. So we're looking forward to teaching more short courses. Exactly, a short course on NG911, for example.
Great.
And in fact, we've made a proposal for this. We have a set of proposals for 1 month short courses, but you could take 3 of them in a semester, and basically you could get a 3-credit course, or you could take them as an engineer from some other organization or as a member of your community, and you could, pay as you go, 1 month of school and then go back to work, something like that. So we're trying to spread the knowledge.
Fantastic stuff. One of the smartest people I know, Professor. You are one of the smartest people. And the thing I love the most about you is, just like everybody else, you are so susceptible to squirrel. And I love that about you.
And I can't hide it. So
and you don't even try. And that's the beauty. Why bother?
Right.
Professor Carol Davids, who's the director of the Illinois Institute of Technology Real-Time Collaboration Lab, Communications Lab. Thank you so much for everything that you do for the industry. Thank you for the last decade of mentorship around my career, and somebody who I get to talk to at least once a year for a couple of weeks.
Now I know you got a meeting coming up in a week.
I always look forward to it.
Right. Yeah. Good.
You're the best person. You're the person I love the most to hate.
Oh, great. All right. Good. Right. I'll keep on nagging you.
That's okay. Thanks again. And thanks for being a next generation 911 future maker. And thanks for all the support you've given me over the last decade. Seriously, I really do appreciate it. A big part of my career, I account to your mentorship.
Well, thanks, Fletch, because
I didn't pay tuition.
You didn't pay tuition, right? Damn it.
Damn it. Almost got you a raise.
Yeah, right. Look at me.
Well, thanks so much for joining. I appreciate you sitting down with us.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mark. It's a great pleasure. Always a great pleasure. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That wraps up this session of Next Generation 911 FutureMakers. This is Fletch. Thanks so much for listening. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter at Fletch911. You can check out the rest of my blogs and podcasts at fletch.tv. And if you like what you heard today, be sure to click on subscribe below. And don't forget to click that bell so you'll be notified whenever a new podcast is published. This podcast is made possible through the support of 911 Inform, making next generation 911 solutions for the enterprise and making seconds count. Graphics design and layout is by Samantha Wayand. I'm your host, Mark Fletcher, ENP. Once again, thanks so much for listening. I certainly do appreciate it. Stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.